The sky was gray, and the rain hit the ground like little knives. In the center of a busy alien street, a crowd had formed. They laughed, shouted, and pointed at the woman lying in the mud. She was shaking, her silver blue skin covered in dirt and slime. Her eyes were wide but empty, as if her spirit had already left her body. No one helped her, no one showed mercy. "Disgusting creature," one alien said, throwing another fistful of mud at her. "She deserves worse," another added, kicking her side with his heavy boot. The woman didn't fight back, she just stayed still. She had learned long ago that fighting only made it worse. Every time she spoke, they punished her. So now, she stayed quiet like a broken thing. Farther away, leaning against a wall, stood a human man. His name was Cole, and his face was calm, but his hands were tight fists. He watched the scene with cold eyes. He didn't know the woman, but something about her made his chest hurt. Maybe it was her silence, maybe it was her eyes. He didn't like bullies, and this wasn't the first time he saw this happen. The mud-covered alien woman had no name here. They called her filth or waste, and sometimes worse. She had once worn a dress of glowing silk. Now she wore rags. She had once walked with pride. Now she crawled. She had once been someone, but no one remembered that now. Cole took a step forward, then stopped. Helping her could mean trouble. This planet didn't like kindness, especially toward useless aliens. But as another kick hit her side, he couldn't hold back anymore. He moved through the crowd, silent like a shadow. Some aliens looked at him and laughed. "What, you want to save your pet?" He didn't answer. He just knelt beside her. She turned her head slowly, not expecting help. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. Cole took off his coat and placed it over her body. The crowd went quiet for a second, confused. Then someone shouted, "Leave her. She's not worth it." Cole stood up, eyes sharp like blades. "Then why are you all so focused on her?" he asked calmly. The crowd didn't answer. They didn't like being questioned. Slowly they began to walk away, muttering. Soon, only Cole and the woman were left. He looked down at her, her face still hidden by the coat. "Can you stand?" he asked. She didn't answer, but tried to move. Her arms shook. Her knees slipped in the mud. Cole reached down and gently lifted her up. She was lighter than he thought, almost like air. He carried her through the rain. The streets were quiet. Now the storm had chased away the crowds. His small home was on the edge of the city, hidden behind old buildings. He kicked the door open and stepped inside. It was warm, safe, and smelled like metal and tea. He placed her on the bed and sat down beside her. She looked at him with tired eyes. He offered her water, and she drank slowly. "Why?" she whispered at last, her voice dry like dust. "Why help me?" Cole didn't answer right away. He looked at the fire, then back at her. "Because no one else did," he finally said. "And you didn't deserve that." She closed her eyes. And for the first time in weeks, she felt warm. For the first time, someone had seen her not as trash, but as a person. Her fingers curled around the blanket, and she let out a soft breath. Cole didn't ask her name, and she didn't offer it. But something had changed that night. Something small but powerful. Outside, the rain stopped. But a new storm was beginning to form, not in the sky, but in the hearts of those who had seen what Cole did. Helping her would bring danger, but for now, in that quiet room, only silence remained. And in that silence, something new was born. Hope. The night was silent, but her dreams were loud. She saw faces from her past, voices full of command, full of pride. Then the laughter returned, the same cruel laughter that had thrown her into the mud. Her body shook in her sleep, and she let out a soft cry. Cole sat nearby, not sleeping, just watching her breathe. He had seen broken things before, but never like this. She didn't just carry wounds on her body, she carried them in her soul. When morning came, soft sunlight pushed through the broken window. The woman blinked slowly, unsure if she had woken into a new nightmare or a strange dream. She touched the blanket around her, then the pillow. and finally looked at Cole. He stood near the small stove, heating something in a pot. Her voice was weak. "You didn't leave." Cole turned and gave a small nod. "Didn't plan to." She tried to sit up but winced in pain. Cole quickly brought a bowl of hot broth and placed it in her hands. "Eat," he said. "You need it." She stared at the food for a long moment, then began to sip it slowly. Warmth filled her chest, and her hands stopped shaking. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence was not heavy, it was gentle. Like soft rain after a storm. After she finished, Cole handed her a cloth. "You should clean up if you feel strong enough." She nodded and slowly stood, walking to the small washroom. When she looked into the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. Her face was thin, her eyes hollow, and her skin was still stained with dried mud. She touched her cheek, then turned. On the water, the dirt washed away, but the pain stayed later. Wrapped in fresh clothes that were too big for her, she sat by the fire. Cole placed a small piece of bread in her hand, then sat across from her. "What do I call you?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then in a whisper she said, "Raya." Cole nodded, repeating the name softly, "Raya." He didn't ask questions about where she came from, but she spoke anyway, her voice slow, like each word. "Cost something. I came from a green world, full of music and light." Her eyes drifted to the flames. "I was taken, sold, passed from ship to ship, until I ended up here." She didn't cry, but her voice cracked. "They said I was useless. Broken." Cole stared into the fire with her. They were wrong. Outside, footsteps passed, voices whispered. People had seen Cole carry Raya home. Some were curious, others were angry. Helping an alien, especially one thrown away, was not something this place accepted. Cole knew that trouble was coming, but he didn't regret his choice. Not when Raya looked a little more alive with each hour. Not when she finally sat without shaking. That evening, Raya asked something unexpected. "Why do you live alone?" Cole smiled sadly. "The war ended, and I had no one left." He didn't explain more. And she didn't push. But something changed in the air between them, like two old wounds quietly recognizing each other. The next day, Cole gave her a long coat with a hood and told her to stay inside. He had to go out for supplies, but warned her not to answer the door. As he left, she sat by the window, watching the sky change. Her heart was uneasy, like it had learned not to trust peace. And outside, in the shadows of broken buildings, someone was already watching the small house. They didn't know her name, but they remembered her face in the mud, and they didn't forget the human who dared to lift her up. The candle flickered, even though there was no wind. Raya sat on the floor near the fire, holding an old blanket around her shoulders. She wasn't cold, but something inside her still felt frozen. Each time she blinked, memories pulled her back to places she never wanted to return to. Long halls with silver walls, voices shouting commands, chains on her wrists. Those moments had shaped her into something she didn't understand anymore. Cole returned just after sunset, his boots muddy and his jacket wet. He placed a small sack on the table and nodded at her. She said nothing at first, but her eyes followed his every movement. He moved with quiet strength, not like the others, not like the ones who had thrown her into the dirt. There was no greed in his voice, no demand in his tone. He was different. And that confused her more than anything. While he boiled tea, she stared into the flames and spoke. "I wasn't always like this," she said softly. Cole didn't turn, but he listened. "I was part of something greater. I wore colors that shimmered like stars." She touched her arm as if remembering the feel of soft robes. "I had a name that meant light of dawn in my old language." Cole poured 2 cups and sat beside her. "What happened?" he asked gently. "They betrayed me," she said, voice cracking. "They said I knew too much." She looked down at her hands. "I used to serve in the palace of the high voices, the old ones who ruled the air and songs." Cole raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like royalty." Raya gave a dry laugh. "Not quite, but close enough to be dangerous." She told him of a secret she once overheard. one that wasn't meant for her ears. A plot, a name, a promise of war between stars. And for knowing that, she was erased, not killed, just thrown away, sold into silence, passed around like property, until no one remembered her name, not even herself. Cole didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "Maybe it's time someone remembered." That night, he found an old notebook and wrote her name in it, Raya. She stared at the page like it was a sacred thing. Her name, written by someone else's hand. It was the first time she had seen it in years. The next morning, Cole left early, leaving a short message behind. "Be back soon, stay hidden." But Raya couldn't sit still. Something tugged at her bones, a sense of being watched. She moved to the window and saw two figures across the street. Not moving, just staring. They wore dark uniforms, not soldiers. But worse, her heart beat faster, her breathing shallow. She stepped back from the window and turned off the lights. She crouched in the shadows, remembering old training she had once been taught how to hide, how to wait. Now those forgotten skills returned like ghosts. When Cole came back, his face turned grim the moment she told him what she saw. "They were scouts," he said, locking the door behind him. "Looking for someone?" she asked, already knowing the answer. He nodded. "They don't like when someone disappears from the mud." That night, neither of them slept. Cole checked the locks twice, then sat by the door with a tool in his hand. Raya watched him and felt something strange in her chest. Not fear, not yet hope, something in between. No one had ever stayed up to protect her before. No one had treated her like she mattered. Before the fire went out, she whispered, "Thank you." Cole didn't answer, but he nodded slowly. Outside, the watchers were gone, but they had left marks in the dust. They would return, and next time, they wouldn't knock. And still, in that small house lit by weak flames, something rare was growing. Not just safety, not just kindness, something deeper. The world outside would not understand it, but they didn't care. Because in a life full of silence and pain, Raya's story had finally started to speak again. Asterisk, the knock didn't come like thunder. It came soft, slow, and polite. Cole froze, his hand halfway to the door. Raya looked up from the floor, her eyes narrowing. She felt it before she heard it. Something wrong behind that knock. One knock, then silence. Then another, like it was pretending to be friendly. Cole didn't move, didn't breathe. They both knew the polite ones were the most dangerous. The door stayed closed, but a voice slipped through the cracks. "We saw the girl. Human," it said, smooth as oil. "Hand her over and no one gets hurt." Cole didn't answer. And the silence between them grew heavy. Outside, the voice laughed. Lightly, still quiet. "That's brave or stupid." Then footsteps moved away, fading into the city noise. But neither Cole nor Raya moved for a long time. She sat near the cold fire, gripping the blanket with pale fingers. "They know now," she said quietly. "They'll come back." Cole nodded. "Then we need to be ready." That night, Cole opened a locked crate under the floor. Inside were old things, a dusty rifle, a faded coat, metal tools with sharp edges. Raya watched in silence, recognizing the scent of weapons. "You were a soldier," she said, not asking but knowing. Cole gave a small nod. "Long ago, when humans still mattered out here." She reached into the crate and pulled out a small silver cube. When she touched it, it lit up faintly, glowing from her skin. Cole raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" Raya turned it in her hands. "Memory stone from my world." She closed her eyes and whispered to the cube in her language. The cube glowed brighter, projecting a faint image into the air. Cole leaned closer, watching as images floated above them, buildings that touched the sky, people walking on light bridges, and at the center, a tall woman in a royal cloak standing beside a younger one. "That's you," he whispered. Raya nodded slowly. Before everything fell apart, the image faded, and the cube dimmed. "It still remembers," she said, holding it close. Cole stared at her. "Why would they throw someone like you into the mud?" She met his eyes, because power frightens those who don't have it. The next day, Cole set up hidden alarms around the building. He showed Raya how to trigger traps and use tools if needed. Her body was still weak, but her hands remembered. Old skills she learned quickly, and he noticed the sharpness returning to her eyes. Not fear but focus, like a blade being sharpened again. In the evening, they sat across from each other in silence. Then Raya broke it. "Do you think they'll kill us?" Cole didn't flinch. "Probably," she nodded. "Then we make them work for it." They made plans, drew maps, checked exits, and in the middle of it all, Raya looked at Cole and asked, "If I told you I know a way off this planet, would you believe me?" He stared at her, then nodded once. Yes. Her lips curved just slightly. Not a full smile, but something close. "I need time," she said. "Time and something old, something buried." Cole leaned back. "We'll find it, outside." The street looked the same, quiet, gray, broken, but inside the house, something had changed. Raya was no longer just the woman from the mud. She was remembering who she was, and Cole, once just a man living alone with ghosts, now had a reason to fight again. They were both marked, both hunted, but together. They were no longer afraid, and the next time someone came knocking, they wouldn't be so polite. The machines turned on by themselves. One light blinked, then another. Then the whole room began to hum. Cole stood at the doorway, staring in disbelief. Raya sat on the floor, her eyes glowing faintly blue, her fingers resting on a metal panel. "I didn't do it," she said calmly, but her body trembled. Cole stepped closer, his hand on the wall as the circuits lit up with energy. The room they were in was deep under the city, hidden behind a false wall in an abandoned building. Cole had found it years ago, thinking it was just old tech buried by time. But now, with Raya here, the place had come alive. Symbols glowed. On the wall's symbols she could read, but Cole couldn't. "This was made by my people," she said, her voice soft and distant. "It's a vault, a place to protect secrets." Cole walked around slowly, touching cold surfaces. "What kind of secrets?" he asked. She looked at him, her eyes still shining. "Power," she whispered. "The kind that made kings kneel." The center of the room held a pedestal with a strange ring on it. When Raya got close, the ring floated upward and spun slowly. A sharp beam of blue light shot upward from the ring and struck the ceiling. Then an image appeared: her planet, her past, her betrayal. Cole saw soldiers storming the palace, people screaming, and Raya being dragged away. The image faded, and she stood in silence as if she had just lived it again. Cole stepped forward and caught her before she collapsed. She leaned on him, breathing hard. "It takes my energy," she said. "That's why they wanted me gone." Her blood wasn't just blood, it was a key, a fuel, a living link to ancient power. Cole helped her sit down, his face hard with thought. "If they know this, they won't stop hunting you." "They don't know it yet," she replied, "but they will." She pulled up her sleeve and showed a glowing mark just under her skin. "It's waking up," she said. "I'm changing." Cole didn't know what that meant, but he believed her, and he also knew they had little time left. Back at the house, the Watchers returned. This time they didn't knock, they kicked the door down, but they found nothing, just a cold room and a dead fire. The leader, a tall figure with sharp silver eyes, growled, "She's close, I can smell it." Cole and Raya were already on the move. He carried a small pack, she carried the memory cube. They moved through old tunnels, broken stations, paths the city had forgotten. Raya's glow was getting stronger. Sometimes her hands sparked when she touched metal. Sometimes lights turned on just because she walked near them. Cole began to see what she truly was, not just a victim, not just a lost girl. She was a weapon, a secret the galaxy had buried, and now she was waking up. They reached a hidden chamber beneath the hills. It was old, filled with dust, but Raya's presence brought it to life. In the center, buried under a sheet, was something shaped like a ship. Raya placed her hand on the surface, and it responded instantly. Blue lines crawled across its hull, and a voice echoed in her mind. "Welcome, daughter of the flame," it said. She whispered the words aloud, and Cole froze. "What did it say?" he asked. "That it remembers me," she replied, almost in a daze. The ship wasn't big, but it was alive, not a machine, but a sleeping creature of metal and light. Raya touched the side and felt warmth, like a heartbeat. "We can leave," she said. "But I don't want to run anymore." Cole looked at her. "What do you want to do?" She stared at the stars through a broken ceiling and said, "Fight back." The stars blinked above like cold watchers, but in the shadows below, something stirred with heat and purpose. Raya stood in the doorway of the old chamber, her hands glowing faintly behind her. The ship pulsed like a sleeping heart slowly waking. Cole adjusted the straps of his pack, checking his tools one last time. "Once we leave this place," he said, "there's no going back." Raya nodded. "But..." Her eyes were far away. She could feel them, those who hunted her, those who feared what she might become. They were getting closer, drawn not by her scent or sound, but by the very energy she now carried. The city above had grown tense, as if the ground itself knew war was coming. In quiet corners, rumors spread of a glowing woman and a human ghost soldier. Some laughed, others listened, and the dangerous ones started to search harder. In a dark office high above the slums, the silver-eyed commander slammed his fist onto the table. "She's alive," he hissed, "and he's helping her." Another voice answered, low and smooth. "We warned you not to leave her in the mud." The commander turned sharply. "This isn't about pride anymore. She's waking up the old power," the voice responded. "Then burn everything between her and the stars." While those words were spoken, Cole and Raya moved silently through underground paths. Every corner was a risk, every light a threat. But Raya was changing, and not just inside. Metal panels opened when she passed, doors unlocked without keys. Old machines blinked to life just by her breath. Cole watched her with a mixture of wonder and worry. He remembered when she was broken, trembling in mud. Now she walked like she belonged to the stars. But with every step, the glow in her veins grew brighter, and the brighter it became, the more danger followed. They reached the outer ridge of the city by nightfall. There, hidden in a dead grove of metal trees, was the launch site, a forgotten place, half swallowed by dust and roots. But the moment Raya stepped inside, everything shifted. The launch platform lifted itself from the ground. Engines sighed like they were breathing again. The ship hovered above the dirt, responding only to her presence. Cole turned toward the hills, eyes sharp. "They're coming," he said. Raya didn't ask how he knew, she felt it too. The ground hummed with approaching power, voices in the distance, engines howling, and boots stomping through the dark. The attackers didn't come quietly. They came with fire and shouting and weapons ready. They expected to find a girl still weak, a human still scared. But what they found was fire. Raya stepped forward, her arms raised, her whole body pulsing with blue light. The machines behind her answered with a roar. The ship launched into the air and hovered above her, as if waiting for a command. Cole threw a flash bomb and charged into the fight. His moves sharp, practiced, deadly. He wasn't a soldier anymore. But he remembered how to become one. Raya didn't run, she faced them. The first wave charged and fell. She didn't touch them, she only raised her hand. Energy burst from her like a storm, tossing enemies into the air like leaves. Her power didn't burn, it silenced, paralyzed, overwhelmed. But then came the silver-eyed commander. Stepping calmly through the chaos, he wore a shield of ancient tech and a cruel grin. "You've grown," he said to her, "but you're still just one." Raya looked past him and saw Cole fighting 5 soldiers at once, never backing down. Then she looked back and said, "No, I'm not just one." She lifted both hands, the cube in her pocket glowing through the fabric. Light exploded from her chest, from her arms, from her voice. The ground split, the air cracked, and the old tech around the commander shut down completely. He fell to his knees, screaming as his body sparked and failed. When it was over, Raya stood in silence. Glowing like a sunrise, Cole walked up beside her. Bruised but still standing, they didn't speak. There was no need. The ship lowered its ramp, lights blinking slowly, patiently. But Raya didn't step forward yet. She turned to the shadows where survivors hid, where broken ones watched from. A distance. "They're still down here," she said. "Still treated like I was." Cole nodded. "What do you want to do?" She looked at the ship, then back at the city, and said, "Stay." Smoke still rose from the hills, curling into the morning sky like fading memories. The battle had ended, but the city had not returned to silence. Something had changed in the air, heavier than smoke, brighter than fear. People whispered her name now, not in hatred, but in awe. They spoke of a woman of light, of a human who fought beside her. Some called her a ghost, others called her a goddess. But to Cole, she was just Raya, the woman who once lay in the mud. She stood on the broken launch platform, staring at the ship waiting above. Its lights blinked patiently, as if calling her home. But her feet didn't move, her hands remained. At her sides, behind her, survivors of the lower city began to gather. The weak, the forgotten, the ones who were always told to stay silent. They looked at her, not with fear, but with hope. Raya turned to them slowly, her eyes glowing soft. "Blue. I know what it feels like," she said, her voice louder than before. "To be thrown away, to be seen as dirt." She stepped forward, standing above the crowd on the edge of the ramp. "They thought I would vanish," she said. "But I remembered who I was." The people watched in silence, their faces marked by years of pain. Then one by one, they began to step closer. Old workers, injured wanderers, children with glowing eyes like hers. They didn't need to understand the past to see what stood in front of them now. She wasn't just power, she was proof. Proof that rising from filth was possible. Cole stood beside her, scratched and bruised but smiling. "You could leave now," he said. "No one would blame you." She looked at him and smiled back. "Just a little. I don't want to leave," she said. "Not yet." The ship waited. But she reached out her hand and touched its side. With a whisper in her old language, it powered down gently. It would sleep until called again, until needed. Again, Raya turned to the people. "We rebuild," she said. Not a question, but a promise. Days passed, then weeks. The ruined edges of the city began to change. Machines once buried came to life under Raya's touch. Water flowed again, lights returned, walls were raised. Those who once kicked her into the mud now watched from far away. They didn't dare come close, not because of fear, but because of shame. One evening, Raya sat by the fire with Cole. The stars above were clear, the same ones that once seemed so far. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked. Cole stared up. "Sometimes," he said. "But then I remember who I'd be leaving behind." She didn't answer, just leaned closer to the fire. She held the cube in her hand, and for the first time, it showed a new image. Not the past, not her pain, but the people around her now. Their faces, their laughter, their strength. The cube had stopped being only memory. It had become something more, a future. Children ran through the streets now, shouting her name like a hero in a tale. Cole worked on machines again, laughing more than he used to, and Raya walked among them, not glowing, not floating, just walking, like one of them, because she was. She had once been humiliated, left to rot in the mud, but someone had seen her, had lifted her, and because of that, she rose, not as a weapon, not as royalty, but as something stronger valued.